Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has come out in theaters, the start of Phase 5. It made $100 million on its opening weekend, which in Ant-Man franchise terms, that's pretty good because the last movie made $75 million, I believe, and this one made $100, so the trajectory was going up. But it wasn't the start to Phase 5 that Marvel was looking for. First of all, the critic score came out, and it just about rivaled Eternals for the worst critically reviewed movie of the MCU in all of its history. It did not fare well with the critics, unfortunately. Add the fact that on its second weekend, it took a 70% drop on its second weekend, making $32 million, which is the single worst first to second weekend drop that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has ever had. That's a big deal, guys. That's a really big deal. And with Creed 3 coming out this Friday, with other movies in March stacked up coming out, I don't even know if next weekend Ant-Man and the Wasp is going to make $15 million based on the trajectory it's going down. Audiences did not come back for this movie, and that is not what Marvel needs with Phase 5, especially this being the start. So it brings up the question, with the people being so divisive over Phase 4, with people being divisive over Phase 5, and Ant-Man and the Wasp not doing nearly as well as Marvel would want it to do, is the MCU in trouble? And guys, I would say, yeah, I do think that the MCU is in trouble right now. Now, that doesn't mean that the MCU can't get better. It doesn't mean that the MCU is doomed. It doesn't mean that the MCU in the next, when Guardians comes out in May, that it won't bounce back, that it won't do well. But I do think that Marvel has some serious issues going on right now based on what I've seen from casual fans, from the hardcore fans, just people in my life. And there's 4 things I personally believe are contributing to Marvel's Phase 5 having a bit of an issue. First off, the first problem we got to adjust here is Endgame. Endgame was both a double-edged sword for Marvel. First off, it made them $2.7 billion. It ended their Infinity Saga with a bang. It ended on such a high note. They succeeded and pulled off everything they wanted to with Endgame. The problem, though, with Endgame is it wrapped up a lot of storylines and a lot of characters that audiences loved and came to the movies of the MCU for. And once Endgame was done, a lot of people saw that as the end for their Marvel journey. You know, one thing that I was talking about on a live stream recently while talking about this issue, it's almost like Papa Kevin Feige sat us all down as kids and said, let me tell you this tale, this tapestry of a story involving all these characters that you're going to fall in love with. And it took 10 years. And we all grew up on the carpet as Papa Feige told us this grand story. And it came to this finale, and it was just bonkers crazy. It was everything we wanted. It satisfied us. We congratulated Papa Feige for a great story well told. We all got up to go on with our new lives, and Papa Feige said, wait, come back to the carpet, kids. The story's not over. We all sat down and was like, what more could there be? And Papa Feige went on to say, so now it's Christmas, and Hawkeye can't get home. And we're all sitting there like, wait, this is the story you're going to follow up with? This is what you're gonna do after that grandiose finale? I've heard it from a lot of people. I've seen it around a lot. They don't care about the story going on in the MCU now that Endgame has had its grandiose finale. And that brings us, guys, to problem number 2. Oversaturation. The MCU, and this is one that they're kind of fixing as we speak, because Kevin Feige has come out and said that they are pulling back on their Disney Plus shows. But for a while there, they were putting out a lot of shows on Disney Plus. And they were putting them out at such a frequent pace that people felt like they couldn't keep up. And one of the things about Marvel is they've conditioned the audience over the course of 10 years that every project eventually leads into the next. You have to watch this in order to keep up with the story that's going on if you want to stick and be a hardcore follower of the MCU. When they started putting out all of these shows, which, let's be honest, all the shows mostly centered around supporting characters from the movies that really weren't anyone's favorite characters, and new unknown characters that were behind a paywall of Disney Plus that you had to commit to watching every week. Essentially, Marvel, at least the audience, I think, felt like they were giving them homework. And I felt like this was going to happen as soon as they announced the Disney Plus shows. And what I kind of thought was going to happen has happened. My grandparents, for example, were the example I used a number of years ago. I knew that they were not going to want to watch all these Disney Plus shows. And my grandparents, they used to go to every Marvel movie. They enjoyed the MCU. The more shows that came out on Disney Plus, the more they felt like they were missing because they just weren't watching the shows. They've stopped going to the Marvel movies. I have friends in my life that went to Marvel movies with me growing up in high school. This was our thing. We were jazzed. I talk to them nowadays. They say, no, I missed that show, so I didn't see that movie in theaters. Marvel, I think, made a big boo-boo. A big boo-boo with putting out so many shows and having shows. That's the thing, too, is not all the shows connected to the movies, but as I mentioned before, the audience was conditioned to believe that they did. And in some cases, they did. With WandaVision, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was the first example of you have to watch a Disney Plus show in order to fully understand what's going on in this movie. And that didn't hurt Doctor Strange in the box office initially. It made like $900 million. But I do think that this is a slow effect aftermath of what's going on with their oversaturation. All right, guys. Problem number 3. Overly fantastical. The MCU has gotten overly fantastical. When you look at the first phase of Marvel, you had Iron Man, which was essentially a story of a man rebuilding himself. There was so much work done to ground that character in the real world. Yes, you had that Ironmonger fight at the end, but for the most part, Iron Man was in a world that you could believe and buy into as an audience member. You move on to Captain America. It took place during World War II, something that we're familiar with in our real life, in our history. And it was a character-driven movie, basically, introducing us to Steve Rogers, who he is, making us love Captain America. Even when you got to a movie like Thor, yes, it was fantastical. It took place in another realm, but they brought it down to Earth. They brought Thor to Earth in a fish-out-of-water story. You can complain about that if you have complaints about that, but it did help to humanize the character and bring us to a place that was familiar, and they were able to bring all these elements together into the Avengers to make it work. You go on to Phase 2 even. Iron Man 3 is essentially a story about a real man dealing with PTSD. Yes, it's about fantastical stuff, but it still had that groundedness in reality. Captain America Winter Soldier, a political thriller, a spy espionage, still felt grounded in its reality. Even when you got to a Guardians of the Galaxy, it built its world so well, and they were able to fit it in with the groundedness on Earth that it all worked. They did a good job of asking the audience to buy into one thing and making it all work together in Phase 1, 2, even 3 with Spider-Man Homecoming, just a kid going to high school. The real big ass that movie has is the fact that he has spider powers. When you get to the movies we've had in just the past couple... Just the past movies that we've had Black Widow. It tried to be grounded. It tried to be more spy espionage. I don't feel like it really succeeded at that. It had a big ending with this thing in the sky. It felt completely out of this world. It did not feel believable. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, dealing with the multiverse. There was no real groundedness to the world in that either. Thor: Love and Thunder, just basically a cartoon. I enjoyed it. I laughed at it, but there was no sense of groundedness in reality with that movie. Even when it took place on Earth, you didn't feel like you were on Earth. Spider-Man No Way Home kind of got a pass because it brought in characters we loved from other Spider-Man movies, so that kind of worked. Eternals, bringing in characters, talking about how the universe started with this big giant alien creature in the sky, didn't work for everybody. They've gotten to a point that now with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the Quantumania Quantum Realm is filled with out-of-this-world creatures. There's nothing based in reality. I really think that has helped Marvel lose the grasp on the audience. I feel like the audience doesn't buy into the MCU as much as they used to. There isn't characters there like Iron Man and Captain America that ground us in this reality, that bring this verisimilitude to the MCU anymore. It's just so all over the place fantastical. And you look at a thing like Loki with the time variant association, it just doesn't work for everybody. They've niched down so much that they've alienated a lot of audiences. The final problem, I think, for Marvel is problem number 4, the multiverse saga. They have put all the chips in to this multiverse saga. We've seen it with Loki. We've seen it with Spider-Man No Way Home, which did work. But I think it's tired already for the audience. I think Phase 5, starting out with Ant-Man Quantumania, introducing us to Kang, which I don't think people loved Kang as much as Marvel was expecting them to. They really tried to sell that movie on Kang alone, and I don't think people cared as much as they wanted to. And the fact that people don't want to go back to Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. They don't want to go back to the first movie of Phase 5. They're already kind of sick of it. I think they're already kind of sick of the multiverse saga. I go to my wife, for an example, who's a casual Marvel watcher. She didn't care. She didn't care at all about Quantumania. She didn't care about what happened at the end. She didn't care about the post-credit scenes. She just thought it was stupid. She thought it was silly. And I don't think my wife's alone in that. I think a lot of people are feeling that way. I think Marvel didn't realize how ambitious they were going with the multiverse saga, because you can look at the Infinity Saga, and yes, that was ambitious, but it was a different type of ambitiousness because their ambition was getting us to love the characters, to build up characters, to eventually bring them all together in one Avengers film. That was the ambition. Can we get the audience to love these characters and have a movie where all of these characters can work together in one movie? Is that possible? They went for it and they did it. Now they're trying to get audiences to not just love new characters, but also buy into the multiverse, buy into these fantasy elements, and basically suspend their disbelief to a point. It's kind of at a breaking point, to be honest. Now, as I mentioned before, these problems I don't think are irredeemable. I don't think that they're not fixable. And maybe this is just how it's going to be for Phase 5. Maybe they've committed so much to the multiverse saga, to this fantastical idea and fantastical elements of the MCU, that they're just going to alienate some people for a while. But the problem with that is that the MCU is so interconnected. It is constantly building off of itself. If you get further down the line where people are like, I'm not really into the multiverse saga, I'm jumping off, they're never going to jump back on because it's just going to be too overwhelming. So I do think Marvel has some work to do with making sure the audience cares still about the universe, and I think they are losing people because of these problems. But that's just me, guys. What do you guys think of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the state that it's in right now? Do you think there's issues? Do you agree with the problems I have, or do you have problems of your own? Comment down below. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions, guys. And without further ado, let's take a look at what you guys are saying about this.